Andy Cartwright. Real name, Alexander Yushko. Andy Cartwright was a 30-year-old rapper from Ukraine with a growing following in the Russian-speaking hip-hop scene. If you're into that scene, you might recognise him from his multiple studio-recorded releases or seeing his appearances on Versus Battle, a Russian YouTube series where rappers go head-to-head in live battles. I think Andy might just be really tall. Andy Cartwright, born Alexander Yushko, was born in 1990 in Nizhyn, Ukraine, to Valentina and Konstantin Yushko. The city of Nizhyn has quite a history. In the past century, it housed a large Jewish community who were repeatedly targeted by the Soviet Union, and during the Second World War, much of the Jewish community fled from Kiev through Nizhyn into Russia. Nizhyn succumbed to Nazi control in 1941, and along with it brought suffering in the form of the pogroms to the community there, until it was liberated by the Red Army in 1943. It's full of churches and Soviet architecture, the birthplace of several famous artists and actors, but is most notable for its famous cucumbers. His father, Konstantin, passed away in 2015 from a heart attack, but his mother and sister, Ekaterina, still lived in Kiev, Ukraine. Andy's mother remembers him as an intelligent and well-read child. He grew into an ordinary teenager and went to music school for a time and played the piano. I found a source that said that he trained as an English teacher. In an interview in 2017, Cartwright admitted, "Until the age of 25, I lived in Ukraine, or rather, I survived. There was complete, hardcore alcoholism." In 2013, Andy was in St. Petersburg, Moscow, playing shows and was invited onto Versus Battle, the Russian YouTube channel. It was there that Andy met Marina Kochel. "I met a girl who became my wife. She came up to me after the battle to say, 'You had some cool lines.'" The two continued to talk online following Andy's return back to Ukraine, and their relationship grew. Andy introduced Marina to his mother on the phone and through Skype. Soon after meeting, Andy moved to St. Petersburg to be with Marina. Marina Kochel was born in Altai, a Russian republic in southern Siberia, which, look at that, I want to live there. She's a journalist turned astrologer who moved to St. Petersburg, where she became interested in esotericism and astrology. It was there that she met Andy Cartwright. "I have a wife who doesn't like to sit still," Andy said in another interview. The two travelled together and spent time in Italy and Malaysia before settling back in St. Petersburg. They got married, and Andy was keen to start a family. Kochel led a video blog on Channel 78 under the pseudonym Marina Zarina, which translated to English was called Your Personal Motivation. By 2020, Andy and Marina had been together for 7 years, married 5, and lived together in an apartment with their 2-year-old son and Marina's mother, Elena, in the Nevsky Prospect, St. Petersburg. On the evening of the 29th of July 2020, St. Petersburg police received a phone call. The call was from a lawyer named Irina Skirtu. She was calling on behalf of her client, 36-year-old Marina. The lawyer told the police that 4 days ago, on the 25th of July 2020, Marina found the rapper dead in their home, in the room that he used to write music in. According to Marina, she didn't know what to do over those 4 days. She started to cover up his death to protect his legacy, but allegedly came to her senses and called her lawyer. The police attended the scene and found Cartwright in his room, and the fridge, and the washing machine, in 15 separate pieces. The next day, the news hit the Russian press along with the crime scene photos, and the story spiraled into unsubstantiated rumours. The next day, the news hit the Russian press along with the crime scene photos, and the story spiraled into unsubstantiated rumours. Marina Kochel was taken into custody for her own protection. Police feared that his fans might take revenge on her for the death of her idol. However, they apparently then changed their minds, and she was then arrested for suspicion of murder. The media reported that on the evening of the 29th of July 2020, police attended the scene and found Cartwright's remains, with his body found in the fridge, the washing machine, and 7 bin liners stored in Cartwright's room. A hammer, a knife, a cutting board, a hacksaw, a plastic basin, and a pillowcase were seized for evidence. The limbs were sawn perfectly and the body parts were cleaned. It was alleged that Marina had killed and dismembered her husband in front of their 2-year-old son. His organs were recovered from the washing machine and the fridge. Forensics were unable to find 8 organs: his stomach, pancreas, esophagus, gallbladder, bladder, intestines, adrenal glands, and prostate gland. A memorial show was organised by other rappers, with all the proceeds going to Cartwright's mother in Ukraine. Friends gave interviews to the Russian press. The creator of Versus Battle, Alexander Reshchorontov-Timartsev, did not believe that his death was an accident. I was visiting them once, and we talked to Marina, but she had an obsession with it, a sense of ownership, because Andy was a genius. Uncut diamond, which must be kept close. I think that's what happened. Detectives interviewed Marina. She told them Cartwright had become depressed during the pandemic, with much of his financial income stopping. By July 2020, he was in a very bad state, with a developing addiction to hard drugs. She claimed that she had discovered him dead in his room with a syringe next to his body. Except his family and friends were adamant that Andy had never had a drug addiction. Friends said that he had alcohol problems, but did not take drugs and had only, quote, tried weed in the past. The Russian newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda, I really tried with my pronunciations, reported that no drugs were found at the scene. A short time after, Marina's mother, Elena, was arrested under suspicion of collusion to murder. Their 2-year-old son was removed from the family and taken under state guardianship. A search was conducted of the apartment, and the entire place had been sanitised with what looked like white vinegar. It was thought that the team was searching for Cartwright's missing stomach, as police believed that Andy had been poisoned and the stomach disposed to hide the evidence. Marina's lawyer was also searched to rule out the possibility that she may be hiding the evidence, i.e. the stomach. Whilst forensic evidence was to be processed and Cartwright's body examined, possible motives were looked at. In the absence of forensics, the main evidence in this case was a phone and a laptop. Andy and Marina's phones and computers were on a 1-for-2 plan, meaning that they shared data. So it was impossible to see which of them at what time used the data on the devices. Some notes created after Andy's date of death were discovered on Marina's phone, suggesting premeditated plans. How many recordings of DVRs and cameras are stored in the yards, and where they hit and how high and to the side, and so on? How to preserve freedom and guardianship? What will happen to a mother of 67 years and to her son if I give up? Abandonment, dump, construction site, toilet, cottage wasteland, forest field down, cellar, swamp, well, rats, IKEA bag almost under everything, shovel, bags, wet wipes, gloves, UV lamp, get a new board for drawing a child, liquid for ignition, matches and lighters, measurements maximum 59 by 38 by 28, vinegar clean in 5, the door, all rags and t-shirt, keys to the barrier and gate, change in the bag, grills in the shower and sink, watering can, tube, laminate, valve in the shower, washer, refrigerator, freezer, passport, sneakers, tickets on August the 22nd, 23rd, 24th and earlier, a pack of cigarettes, wash your pants or underwear, rags and a t-shirt, a mask. Gavrilovo, Pochtovo Lake and Black Lake. To the left should be the marshes and to the right, the mushroom pickers. The rapper's sister, Ekaterina, told investigators that in Andy's final months, Marina complained about him. She said on calls that he went for a walk with friends or did not come to spend the night. Like, maybe he'll disappear and not come home, and we'll never know where he is. In addition, Andy could not get along with Marina's mother, Eleanor, who allegedly advised Marina to get rid of her husband. Ekaterina said that Marina told her that Andy had a very good sleep, and if she wants to rumble it, then he would not even wake up. So I'm a gross bitch, and I automatically assumed that meant having sex. So I asked a Russian subreddit what it meant, and apparently it's if she wants to have an argument. So I should probably clear that for anyone else whose mind is trash like mine. Moving on. Marina had allegedly discovered that Andy was having a long-term affair with a 26-year-old fan of his named Nadia Romanenko. In 2019, Marina posted on her YouTube channel a 10-minute recording entitled "When You Know Your Husband's Mistress by Sight," as well as some videos about true crime.
A giant red flag.
Despite Marina's claim that she did not know about the affair, there were numerous witnesses who claimed to see Marina verbally abuse both Andy and Nadia. In September 2020, Romanenko joined Andrei Malakhov on the live broadcast talk show on the First Channel. The segment on Andy Cartwright was not advertised before it aired, but it caused a lot of scandal and attention to the case. According to Nadia and his friends, Andy agreed to marry Marina for a residence permit in order to leave a politically unstable Ukraine, and claims that Maria herself proposed to him. Nadia said that she and Cartwright's relationship began back in 2014. When asked if his wife knew about her existence, she replied, "Everybody already knew this." Nadia provided evidence of messages on her phone from Marina, threatening her. She claimed that when Marina found out about the relationship, she called her and tried to frighten her by claiming that her husband suffered from AIDS. Classy. Friends and relatives said Andy referred to Marina as strange and basically thought her beliefs in astrology were a crock of shit. Allegedly, there had been no intimate relationship between the married couple for some time. Marina slept in one room in the apartment with her mother and their son, and Andy in the other. Andy spent most nights at his alleged mistress's apartment, and that he only returned for the sake of his son. Marina had allegedly attempted to blackmail him about access. Nadia said, "Our sexual relations took place at my apartment. I specially rented a flat near his apartment block. We met every day and she did not know about it." Allegedly, their relationship had become so intense over the last year that Andy was considering leaving his wife and son. Nadia said that they dreamed of going somewhere far away together. The investigative committee painted Marina as a brutal woman who had tried to get away with the perfect murder. Marina conspired with her mother to kill Andy, and her mother agreed to help cover the murder up. Marina was inspired by a recent local story of the historian Oleg Sokolov, who killed and dismembered graduate student Anastasia Yashchenko. That's a whole other story. On around 5 separate occasions, Marina asked Andy's sister Ekaterina if Andy had ever suffered from diabetes. An odd question to ask, especially 5 times over, but it will make sense in a minute. Marina had mentioned that if Andy disappeared, she would feel sorry for his mother, but clarified that she herself is to blame because she raised her son that way. The notes on Marina's phone were held as proof that the murder was premeditated. I also found some reports that a man's hand mark was found on one of Andy's limbs, causing speculation that she had help destroying the body, but this remains unsubstantiated. Police ultimately theorised that Andy was murdered with a lethal dose of insulin and may have also been stabbed in the stomach and suffocated with a pillow. Forensics found a needle prick mark on one of Andy's severed hands. A post-mortem revealed extreme low levels of glucose, which the prosecution claimed fitted Marina's MO, and claimed that she acquired a hard-to-trace synthetic insulin and injected Andy with an overdose. The toxicology report stated that traces of substance use was found in Andy's hair, but not a level that would suggest any overdoses. The forensic report confirmed that his death was deemed unnatural. The results also suggested that Andy was likely still alive when she began dismembering him. Police say that Marina injected the rapper, inducing a coma, and then dismembered him limb by limb with a hacksaw whilst he was still alive. His body was mutilated, quote, shortly, a few minutes, dozens of minutes before death, according to the investigation. The autopsy reported that his eyes showed pronounced hypoxia and showed signs of hypoglycemia. In other words, his death was actually by blood loss and not the overdose. Police then claimed that Marina had sexual intercourse with his dead body and drank his blood, and that's why there wasn't any, because Marina had drunk it all. She disemboweled him and threw his organs into the washing machine. Andy's body was cut into 15 pieces. The press said that no drop of blood was found at the scene or within the remains, and the legal team speculated that Marina purposely took care to eliminate all the traces of blood. so that no insulin could be detected in a toxicology report. A note in Marina's phone that read 59 by 28 by 38 turned out to be the exact measurements of their freezer. So she'd measured the fridge to ensure that all the body parts would fit in where, like a living Tetris. Washed his organs in the washing machine twice, rubbed the clean organs with salt and put them in the fridge. She wrapped the other parts in bin liners and stored them in Andy's music room. The surfaces, a knife, hammer, hacksaw, plastic bowl and chopping board were all washed with vinegar to remove the evidence. The windows were covered over tightly with a cloth and the flat was thoroughly cleaned. Most of Andy's organs were recovered, but the missing organs mentioned earlier were never located. The prosecution believed that Marina strategically destroyed these so that it could not be identified that he ingested poison. To prevent his identification via fingerprinting, Marina cut off Andy's fingertips and fed them to the rats in the garden. Marina then logged into Andy's social media accounts and posted on his behalf, responding to his messages, pretending to be him, even replying to his mistress. A photo on his Instagram, which is still active at the time of this video, by the way, was posted days after his death on the 26th of July. Marina studied CCTV around the flat and considered places to dump his remains. Search engine results on her phone showed that after disposing the body, Marina planned to leave St. Petersburg with their son, searching tickets for the end of August. When Marina's lawyer contacted the police on the 29th of July 2020, she explained that Marina had planned to destroy his remains and file a missing persons report. Why she chose then to come clean to the police is unknown. In defence, Marina stuck to the statement she made to the police upon reporting his death, and her defence dismissed the allegations around any motives for murder. Her lawyer insisted petty swearing happens in every family. Therefore, I also asked her as a former investigator, were there conflicts, scandals, money showdowns, love triangles? She categorically denies everything, says that there was love. It was pointed out that there was no secret that Cartwright was married with a young child and he never removed his wedding ring. According to her, she decided on the child only for the sake of him, although earlier she was an opponent of motherhood. Marina quoted, "I'm grateful that he persuaded me to have a baby. I'm happy." A transcript between Cartwright and his mistress from March 2020 was shown to the court, with the contents just being platonic small talk. Marina said that she was used to seeing messages from his fans. She had seen far more obscene messages that fans wrote to her husband anyway. She explains, "I knew about her. I don't see anything in this correspondence. I don't take it in." Marina's lawyer told how the pandemic had severely affected Andy's income as an artist, and to cope, he had turned to hard drugs. Although his close friend Alexander Yeganshin, founder of the St. Petersburg YouTube project Saint Cypher, believes that Andy never used drugs, he has confirmed that 3 weeks prior to his death, he was in a heavy binge. He also confirmed that Cartwright had been affected financially by the pandemic and that pawnbrokers were knocking on the front door 4 days before he died. The last time Alexander saw Andy, 2 weeks before his death, they were working in the studio with another artist, Artem, on an album. Alexander remembers Andy as a smart and kind guy who is always ready to help if necessary. He also had somewhat of a friendship with his wife. He had been in close contact with Marina during his last weeks because she often called him looking for Andy. He drank and walked a lot, and Marina was looking for him, Alexander recalls. Even though she never hung out with us, she didn't make a bad impression. Yes, with his troubles, maybe too open a person, but I can't say anything more. She didn't even drink with us. Marina said that the day before his death, Andy returned home at 2 a.m. drunk and went to bed. The next morning, Marina kissed her husband and went to cook him breakfast and then brought it to him in his room. Andy's room had a folding sofa, a small table with his laptop and a wardrobe. Andy used this room to write his music. On that day, Andy locked himself in his room to write lyrics. Marina returned to pick up the plate around 1 p.m. and Andy had asked her for a beer. Marina had refused with the words, "You will be carried into a binge." An argument ensued, which Marina's mother also heard, but it was apparently not serious and Andy soon calmed down. Around an hour later, Marina returned to the room and discovered Andy lying on the floor. He was lying with his legs on the couch, his body on the floor, and his head was turned at an unnatural position. It became apparent to Marina that her husband was dead. Marina claimed that she pinpricked him upon discovering his body to check whether he was truly dead, which explained away the injection mark on his hand. Marina immediately called 112, Russia's emergency line, for medical assistance. But after the second beep, she realised that she would be suspected of harming him, so she panicked and dropped the call. She then started thinking about what his fans might think about this overdose, that she didn't want him to have an inglorious death, and thought it would look better if he could just disappear. So she decided to make it look like he was missing. So, over the next 4 days, she dismembered him. "I did it," she said, "because of great love, because I did not want a shameful memory for my husband." She packed some of his limbs in bin liners and stored them in his room, and put the rest in the fridge. A lawyer disputed reports that no trace of blood was found at the scene. At the scene of the incident, everything was covered in blood. Blood was pouring from the table to the floor. The lack of blood is not true. She also said Marina did use the washing machine to wash Andy's belongings and other items in the flat, but the allegation of body parts being found in there was an invention of the media. Marina's mother and their son were 10 feet away in the next room whilst that dismemberment happened. Eleanor had noticed no change in Marina's demeanour, and Marina had said nothing. The next day, Eleanor opened the fridge to be faced with the severed body parts, which was how she found out that it happened. When she found out, she wanted Marina to go to the police, but to reduce the risk of any smell, Eleanor helped Marina cover the rapper's body parts with salt and also burn incense sticks in the apartment. They got to work cleaning all traces of evidence from the flat. After 4 days without sleeping or eating, the reality of Andy's death sank in, and Marina could no longer go through with her plan. She realised that she was morally and psychologically appalled about her plan to dismember her husband's body, and on the 29th of July, called her lawyer, Irina. Her lawyer said, "She seemed to me absolutely sane, although very nervous, but she can be understood. She does not look to me like a mad drug addict." She explained the situation quite coherently, but kept repeating, "What have I done? What have I done?" The defence insisted that the missing organs were not deliberately misplaced, but could have been destroyed or discarded in the cleaning process. "If she had thrown it out, she would have thrown everything out," the lawyer explained in reference to the missing stomach. "She had 2 pots of organs. She didn't cut anything out on purpose. When I arrived at her house, there was no smell. Everything was cleaned. Marina tried to destroy all her husband's belongings." The defence believed that the prosecution was trying to form a distorted picture and looked at whether a heart attack caused by the drugs could have led to his death. The 200-page post-mortem ultimately deemed the cause of death unidentifiable. The expert could not exclude drugs, a heart attack, suffocation by swallowing of the tongue, or diabetes. Toxicology confirmed the presence of amphetamine and phenobarbital and other drugs. The expert agreed that although there was not a lethal amount found, this does not mean that there was not at the time of his death. Therefore, drug overdose could not be excluded. The expert did not find traces of insulin, but also confirmed that any presence of insulin may have disintegrated before the examination. Cartwright had hypoglycemia, which would contradict the use of insulin. If he had overdosed on insulin, he would be hyperglycemic with high blood glucose. The defence argued that whilst the purchase of the insulin was made on her card, this does not mean that she did it, which is a colossal reach, in my opinion. Regarding the notes on Marina's phone, Marina Cole's notes on her phone are questions for the lawyer that she wanted to ask me, Marina's lawyer told Komsomolka. She wrote this note an hour before meeting me. She asked, "What will happen to me? What will happen to the mother? What will happen to the child?" I asked her, "Did you think over the option how you would take him out?" To which she replied, "No, I don't have a car or a license." She washed the organs, she didn't throw them away. I rinsed the pillowcases because they were rotting. Not sure what that's got to do with anything. Then I sprinkled salt because salt stops the decomposition process. Yes, the lamp shone on her apartment. It was done by a forensic expert. When asked why Marina had not called her lawyer sooner, she replied, "I thought that all conversations were being wiretapped. The mother would be arrested, the child would be taken away." Which, to her credit, she wasn't wrong. Their son was told that his father was at work and his mother was in the hospital. The child was used to dad being away for days or weeks due to his work as an artist. Initially, he was under the care of distant relatives but was removed into state care. Marina underwent a polygraph and the ICR has released a video of an investigative experiment with no sound, with the person's face hidden with no results. There was no real purpose to releasing this. Defense lawyers claimed Marina was subjected to disgusting and sick claims. She was allegedly asked, "Did you taste his blood?" and asked if she had sexual intercourse with his dead body. Her defense argued that the police questioning amounted to illegal coercion to testify by use of threats, which included taunts that investigators would find a good orphanage for her infant son when she was jailed. Marina categorically did not admit to murdering Cartwright. We believe that the accusation is not substantiated at all, since it is not clear the cause of death and whether there was a crime in general. If the court decides she is telling the truth, she has committed no crime in Russian law. So, as it stands, police haven't found any evidence that proves Marina Kokol killed Andy Cartwright. The result of the post-mortem was revealed in court in January 2021, which found that despite the oxygen levels and toxicology, forensic experts failed to provide substantial evidence that he had been murdered. It seemed that a final theory was suggested when the report revealed that Cartwright was found to have oxybutyrate in his system, whatever that is. The investigation requested another examination, with the theory that Marina drugged him with oxybutyrate and suffocated him with a pillow, but this was later abandoned. The main conclusion of the experts is that it was not possible to establish the cause of death. Hence, it is impossible to establish a way and generally call the event a murder, lawyer Yuri Avdiv explained. Ultimately, Andy Cartwright suffered lack of oxygen to the brain, which led to his death. The cause, however, is still unknown. The Russian news outlet Komsomolskaya Pravda sought an opinion from the head of the Department of Forensic Medical Examinations of Sechenov University, Dr. Yuri Pigolkin, who confirmed that it was not possible to decipher the cause of death from the findings. The report mentions mechanical asphyxia, which means that a physical cause led to his suffocation, but what caused it in this case is unknown. It could have been a pillow, it could have been choking on food, it could have been his own tongue. Yuri Pigolkin explained, "As for the fact that the man was dismembered still alive, here too, you need to be careful. If the body is dismembered within 15 to 30 minutes after death, some of the reactions will mimic that dismemberment occurring during life. The presence of focal clusters of erythrocytes along the edge of the sections indicate that they occurred shortly, a few minutes, 10 minutes, before the onset of death. But it is possible that in a short time, a few minutes, 10 minutes after the onset of death. In addition, there should be many more documents in a comprehensive study. On the basis of one histology, experts do not draw their own conclusions. They evaluate everything together. The main conclusions of the examination were not shown to you." Marina's team was confident the court should interpret all doubts in her favour. She was granted house arrest on the 27th of October 2021. When she was freed from the dock, she burst into tears and hugged her lawyer and beamed as she left the court. Marina was released under the condition that she does not speak to her mother, who also remained under house arrest on suspicion of collusion. The judge permitted her son to be reunited with her and he was returned home from the orphanage that he was staying in. Friends of Cartwright voiced their anger upon learning this, referring to the Russian justice system as impotent. In December 2021, all charges were dismissed against Elena Kokol. The case against her was found to have been conducted illegally, with an inappropriate search of her premises and seizure of evidence. The baby is currently under Marina's sister's guardianship. This was originally denied but overturned when Marina and her sister filed a lawsuit against the decision. But, bless him, he'd already spent his third birthday in a Russian orphanage. Cartwright's mother and sister are seeking custody of the child and wish to take him back to Ukraine. A lawsuit has been filed claiming that the investigation has been conducted illegally and unreasonably. Lawyers insist there are no grounds for the criminal case against Marina under the article "Desecration of the Bodies of the Deceased" as this states that she did so in order to hide the traces of the crime committed by her. So the defence argues that the reason behind the dismemberment is not correct. However, the case continues under the article of murder. A report on the 4th of May 2022 further says that the District Court has registered a reconsideration for the charge of desecration of human remains following death. Marina herself is currently under house arrest and awaiting trial. She spends her time engaged in creativity, sewing, knitting, making dolls and trying to earn a living. If convicted, Marina Kohal faces up to 15 years in prison. At the end of 2021, following a year and a half in a St. Petersburg morgue, Andy Cartwright was repatriated back to Ukraine and he was buried in a Kyiv cemetery. The ceremony was held in a narrow family circle. His fans have now posthumously released a video of his last song in his honour.